Okay, so we're live. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of SWARMathon. SWARMathon is a series about how AI is transforming the path to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, also known as SDGs. My name is Manal Zajismaili, and I'm here with my amazing co-host Anne Cantera. We're excited to explore how AI is reshaping the path toward achieving the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So let's start with a quick overview of these 17 goals. These are range from no poverty, zero hunger, clean energy to building sustainable cities. You can learn more by checking out the link in the comments. And if you or anyone that you know is working in these areas and would love to join us as a speaker for future events, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or Anne. We would love to hear from you. Uh, Today's focus is on SDG 4, quality education, which is about ensuring inclusive and equitable education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all. So the guiding question that we'll be exploring today is how can AI be a force for equitable learning, supporting diverse needs, breaking down systematic barriers, and building learning systems that truly serve everyone. And we're lucky to have brilliant panelists with us today. Unfortunately, one of our panelists couldn't make it today. There is something urgent came up with her, and we don't have her, but we have Dr. Jess Mendoza and Catherine Decker with us today. Would you like to introduce yourself and give us a brief introduction of what you do and what you're working on?
Yeah, so I'm Jess Mendoza. It's good to be here. Thank you everyone for organizing this. And I have a background in UX research. So I'm a UX researcher. I've been in this role for 3 years. Prior to UX, I have a background in academia where I studied cognitive psychology, specifically how we interact with technology and how that influences our learning, memory, attention. And so being on UX, now I'm building software for people to interact with. So I feel like I'm on both sides of that coin. Outside of work, I really enjoy painting, spending quality time with my family, and of course, playing around with tools like Cursor, Lovable AI, and just teaching anyone that will let me how to use these tools because I just find them really fun to explore.
And I have to agree. I think they're fun. I'm Kathy Decker. I am an operations leader, and also have a background in analytical sciences. I've been in government, pharmaceutical, and currently in the regulation technology industry, specifically focused on how AI can help with reg tech interpretation and dissemination. Um, and outside of work, I have, brought 2 kids up through the education system. Also have a background in the pharma industry and educational programming for medical professionals. Um, kind of really see a strong use case in that area for not only, kind of younger children education, but also education throughout the lifespan. Something that I really kind of resonates with me. I consider myself a lifelong learner and really have enjoyed some of the educational activities I've completed recently that have started to bring in AI type of assessments. So rather than just that multiple choice sort of exam, you're basically, being interacting and being quizzed by an AI agent that I've found it to really kind of help identify the areas of weakness and strengthen those areas as you continue through the program. So very happy to be here.
Thank you,
Awesome.
ladies. Hi, everyone. I'm Anne Cantera. I just wanted to say that it's probably okay. We are down a panelist today because, as a mom with a neurodiverse child, I have plenty to say about the education system. And I just wanted to remind everyone that Designathon, the sister podcast to this one, will be May 31st. And the topic is UX to AI how to make that pivot and get work. So that should be a good one. I hope we'll see you there. And that's it. Back to you, Manaz.
Is it? It is a good one. I'm excited for that. I can't wait. Okay, to start with, let's look at how AI can support neurodiverse and cognitively diverse learners. Jess, how does your background in cognitive psychology inform the way we design AI-powered learning experiences?
Yeah, so in cognitive psychology, we talk about how people acquire information. They are presented the information, they either then move on to repetition, and that repetition then is tested through tests like multiple choice, memory tests. And as we go through that, we understand that not everybody does well on multiple choice tests. For one, would be an anxious test taker because I'm like, oh my gosh, a timer is happening. Like, I'm going to die soon. I'm going to explode or something. And so, in that moment, we are using our cognitive resources in worrying and being anxious rather than thinking systematically about, oh, let me recall the information from chapter whatever. And so now with the use of AI, I think testing using multiple choice is going to change because that's asking people to retain information. And now that information is always available at our fingertips, I think the most important thing is going to understand not only how to apply that information in the real world, but also how to determine what information is reliable and what isn't. So critical thinking is going to be a big pillar in the way we are approaching these AI literacy curriculums.
Yeah. Okay. So, how do you think that AI can personalize learning without overwhelming or excluding users?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here. So I really think one of the ways that it can help is to kind of auto-generate multiple versions of content, so that, it's taking into consideration those different levels or those different learning styles, which previously may have been prohibitive due to cost or time and so forth, whereas now it can be done more quickly and based on heaps of information and research to back it up. I think it can also kind of go through the content and identify any jargon or ways of communicating information that may not align with where a learner is. So you can kind of lower that cognitive load of having to learn a whole new book or understand a whole new vocabulary when you're first coming into a new topic or subject. And you kind of maybe doing plain language rewrites if it's more technical information. And I know one of the ways that I find myself using it frequently when I'm trying to learn more new information is almost as like a co-pilot tutor. So it sits off to the side, I'm reading information, I'm learning information, and when something is portrayed or it's kind of presented in a way that's not completely clear to me, I can go to that AI and formulate take on the role of this expert and explain this to someone at this level. So I think those are some ways that it can really kind of reduce that cognitive load and make the learning more effective across the broader population.
Yeah, to add to what Kathy said, I think also it helps students understand where they are in their learning path. Like it helps build that intro level of introspection to say, hey, where are my gaps in knowledge and where are my strengths too? I think that's really powerful because not everyone has access to like a private tutor that could sit there, but for $20 a month, maybe now you do. So
I think there's a huge opportunity to train assistants or tutors based on the very specific needs of the person, their learning disability, their neurodiversity, whatever it is. It's a game changer because teachers, two teachers to 30 children just can't do that. And those kids get left in the dust. I have one of them. And that's what happens. And he would have to bring home his work and we would have to kind of rearrange it into ways that he could absorb and actually, ingest. And there's no way a school can do that ever. And I mean, it's just too big of a lift. And now, like you said, for maybe $20 a month or whatever it is, no matter what your disability is, we can train these things on the individual, and that's magical. I've experienced it myself because I have my own learning issues, and mine are a lot of but why, but why, but why. Like kids would hate me.
Yeah.
But the way my brain works, if it doesn't make sense, I can't absorb it. Like until I understand it from a point of view where, oh, okay, now that makes sense, then I can ingest it. But until it does, I'm like, absolutely not. I reject that on its face.
Mhm.
So to
Yeah.
have that opportunity to just keep asking why until it makes sense, that's not even a specific model. That's not even specific training. It's just baked into the cake. So
Yeah.
I think that in itself is super valuable.
Exactly. It's like having a patient, like patient's person next to you that like don't judge you, don't give like don't get to conclusion based on
Yeah.
you, like based on your knowledge, or that you don't get it, and he or she like it needs to explain it over and over to you in different ways, and you feel free to like talk it without any fear, like fear of being judged or anything
Mhm.
else. I have like right now I have like GPTs, like I have a career coach for myself, I have a life coach, like I have different like GPTs, and gave them like all the information about myself, like I'm a perfectionist, like not a proud one. And I'm like this, like I have this problem, like help me like go through this phase of my life considering all of this. Like, and this is like very helpful for me to have this assistant next to me.
You know, and I have a kind of love-hate going on thing with the not feeling judged, because it is awesome in this situation, right? But also when people start turning to AI for emotional things that I personally don't feel like AI should be doing, but people are willing to talk to it like a therapist for the sake, because they don't feel judged, and I worry if that's a slippery slope and kind of a whole other topic.
Mhm.
But that not wanting to feel judged is a lot of the time why kids stay quiet in the classroom when they don't understand, and now they don't have to. They can
Yeah.
just,
Exactly.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yep.
that's
And sometimes it's
magical. Sorry.
yeah. Oh no, I'm sorry. Sometimes it's like not it's you don't even understand that you don't understand, right? There's sometimes you don't even know where to begin, and so bringing that into a group environment can be very intimidating. And that's one of the areas that I found it very helpful is, okay, do I really understand? You know, they're like, where do I even begin to try to understand this?
Yeah, exactly. It also needs you, it gives you this opportunity to evaluate yourself on a topic. Like,
Hmm.
uh, where am I in this topic? Like, where should I like keep going? Like, how, like, what level I am in, and like, how can I continue? Give me a guideline, and like give you the path you can follow. It's very great tool to have like in this area. So,
Mhm.
um, what do you think are the like the cons of this? Like, what are mm, the negative side of it?
Oh, there's a lot that could be negative.
Dependency.
Like with everything, there's that. I think when we don't understand how these tools work, like I noticed there's a lot of fear around, oh, if you're using ChatGPT at work, there's a lot of fear. And it's because like a lot of people are not understanding what's happening under the hood and only get exposed to those headlines of like LM hallucinated and this happened. Somebody bought a car for $1 as a result. So things
Yeah,
like that. And I think that's where it's very important to hone in on critical thinking and problem solving, and also getting curious about, well, if this is a hallucination, if this is a tool that is prone to this, why is it prone to that? Like, how Anne was saying, like the 5 whys. Like, why is it prone to that? Why does that happen? What's the process behind that? And how do you mitigate it? And so I think if you just kind of release a program where everyone's using AI, but they're not taught the bare minimum of the AI literacy basics, then that can be very dangerous because, again, we don't know if those sources are accurate. We don't know if the way that they're learning is giving them sources from reputable places versus sources from things like Reddit. I know Character AI got a lot of heat for that, and rightly so, because they should have done a little better in training the model.
Yeah.
And I think there's a huge risk of, well, we don't need to pay teachers. We could just have the bots teach, and like, absolutely not. I mean, if there's some far off place where there are no teachers, is an AI teacher better than nothing? Yes, but we don't want to see human teachers getting laid off because of, as much as I have my complaints about public school, I would still rather my child be in the classroom with a human who has an AI assistant, and my child has his assistant, and that they take on initiatives to kind of, clean the water and plant trees and do things for the environment, and keep a balance. And because as soon as money gets involved, their balance flies right out the window. They just want that money in their pocket. So I think we as the people will have to fight to keep that balance. There's no, that's it. We're going to have to fight to keep that balance if we want that to continue to exist.
Even your dogs are fighting for that balance.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. Like, these shouldn't be considered replacements for people, regardless of there always needs to be oversight, double checking, critical thinking, making sure that, that just, it's amplified, I think, in this arena where you have to make sure that what the information you're getting back is really accurate. And I think, we need to make sure that we're keeping up with governance in terms of responsible AI, and making sure that, there's oversight of these programs, and that we have good policies and, regulations in place. It's kind of, my hat. And, right now, I think the statistic is that only about 50%, maybe slightly over 50% of workplaces actually have some sort of responsible AI policy in place. And so the speed of progression of use of these tools within education, regardless of the environment, is really kind of outpacing the ability of organizations to keep those responsible AI policies up to date.
Yeah, I hear like some like college students right now, they're like very relying on like doing their homeworks, maybe with the help of LLMs, and I was thinking like, why not? Like, why the homework should be like so simple that like they can do it like with that? Like, why don't we make it more challenging for them that and ask them to do like use LLMs to do this homework rather than them like doing it in with fear of others being noticed, like, or catch them that they use the AI to do this homework. And like I see like college students right now that like saying, oh, I said like, why don't you get help from like ChatGPT? And they said like, oh, they will know about it and they will like give me a low score because of that. And so how they want to know about it? And they said like they're telling us that they have this AI detectors that they can know that like we use AI. I mean, that's bullshit. Like how they're gonna
They
know
don't
about
work,
that?
for
Like
one. They are inaccurate. And this is what I mean about public school kind of getting exposed, right? Like, if you don't trust your students to do homework, then have them do the work in the classroom in front of you, and let them bring home lessons that they need to teach themselves, and then do the work in front of you in the class. If you want them to write a summary, okay, send them home with the subject matter and have them write the summary, because they do need to have a minimum amount of skills. Like, I do feel like there will be a checklist that says, okay, you need to be able to do this, this, and this on your own to move on to the next level. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep. But
they
probably a
just want
little.
to keep doing things the same way, right? What's the definition of insanity? Like, it's literally what's happening in public school right now is they don't want to embrace or change or redo their lesson plans or put in the ton of work that it's going to take to make this new paradigm work. Period.
Yeah. So being on that side of academic education, like I recall that there were certain ways I was like, oh, this is just how we do things. And you can do a multiple choice exam or you could do a paper. And I also found out that it's up to the instructor to decide whether or not you need the newest edition of the textbook. And when I found that out, I was so mad because I was like, you mean you could have saved me money if I used the old textbook and then I could have like Googled some open source literature to fill in the gaps. So I just, I took a different approach and I would have students go out there and look for these scientific articles and summarize them as best as they could and then fill in the gaps in class too. So it was kind of like the reverse of what Anne's saying, but a little bit similar. But one thing that I also noticed is that once you're in that setting of like, oh, I've prepared the lessons for my semester and now I have this course, I know I'm going to teach this course for the next X amount of years, you get used to thinking that this is a fallback resource. Why do I have to change it again? And that, again, like when people are asked to change something, whether it's a habit or a way of thinking, it becomes like pulling teeth because nobody wants to change the way people think. And that's going to be a requirement in today's world with AI. Another thing is relying heavily on textbook information of, again, going back to multiple choice testing. It's going to required to have students and teachers think differently, collaborate with students in the way that you're teaching them a subject, you want them to learn the subject. Maybe we can revisit something like Bloom's taxonomy of learning, which is like once you learn something, if you can teach it to somebody else, you've now learned it. And so maybe now it's going to require people to have presentation skills, communication skills, public speaking skills, which is really important and uniquely human. Like, yes, you can have an AI write a script, a speech, right? But if you don't have the skills to deliver that story, then what does it matter? You're just going to be reading
Yeah.
off a paper. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, you know what I want to
Yep.
add too, though. I'm not pointing fingers at teachers. Teachers do not make enough money, except for where
Of
I live. They
course.
get they do. Long Island is one of the very few places that actually pays teachers a reasonable, livable wage. It's the systems themselves. I don't want any teachers to think I'm teacher bashing. I have tons of teachers in my family. They deserve more than what they get, but also with an AI assistant, maybe they can get some hours of their life back every single
Yeah.
week. So.
Mhm.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that my dissatisfaction is not with them. It is with the systems at large.
No, it really is because with the systems, I mean, because they overload, like you're teaching X amount of courses this year, and you have to do research, and you have to do surveys, and you have to do this in this fixed amount of time, which of course builds into that habit of like, well, why would I recreate this new syllabus when I'm already juggling this much? I can only take on this much without burnout. So yeah, like to Anne's point, I do think the problem lies in the systems and the resources that are given to educators or not given to educators.
Mhm.
Yeah. Cassie, you've worked at the intersection of strategy, operations, and innovation.
Mhm.
So how can AI help us scale education while like ensuring it stays equitable and accessible for everyone?
Yeah, so I think it's really important that when you're looking at operationally and scaling, that you are seeing it as that adjunct, that add-on or extender, that can kind of that definitely takes the resources that you already have and allows you to expand them further. When you're looking at that, I think there needs to be a real eye towards how does it fit into your overall strategy, whether it's related to your business metrics, whether it's related to your any sustainability goals you may have, energy usage. Those are things I think when you're looking at it from an operational perspective, these are great tools, and they're definitely the technology needs to be integrated into our educational processes, whether that's elementary education, high school, university, or even professional education once you kind of get out into the broader work world. And I think that it's really critical to make sure that you're implementing them in a way that the resources extend and expand that education. They're doing it in a way that's responsible towards your triple bottom line, whether that's your finances, your impact on the world, your energy usage, water usage. Those are all big considerations when you're taking on these programs. But there's also a realm of evolving regulations that really need to be paid attention to. The EU has their AI regulations. Education is the highest risk area, a very high risk area. Emotion detection is a very high risk area if it's even allowed. It has to be very specific cases where you can pull in emotion recognition. So I think from an operational perspective, those are the key areas that you need to pay attention to make sure that you're staying compliant, you're not putting yourself at risk of exposure to whether it's PR lawsuits, whatever that risk may be, that you're doing it in a way that complies with regulations and is socially and environmentally responsible.
Yeah. So what are the biggest gaps and opportunities in implementing AI in these learning ecosystems?
So, Joaquin and I recently had this event called Global Perspectives on Education in AI. And in that event, participants were talking about, and these participants were educators talking about what are the common problems of this issue here. And the top theme that was that arose from that was that lack of financial resources. So not everybody will have access to, I think, Kathy, we were talking earlier about broadband internet, and not everyone's going to have access to that steady connection where they can really get the benefit from learning from the internet. But another gap too is because a lack of resources there, it's not just a lack of resources for what's in the classroom, but how do you empower your educators? That's a twofold thing. Not only do the students need the resources to learn, but educators need the resources to upskill so that they can learn with their students and really get the most out of it. And that's where I feel like there's something missing in the loop to protect educators in that space.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think that the training in these tools should be just as regular and integrated into your processes as training on whether it's security training or whatever other training the AI needs to be brought into that. I was at a AI conference a week or two ago, and there was one of the leads from the AWS AI team, and they encouraged their team to set aside 12 hours per week just to stay up with advancements in the AI ecosphere. That shocked me. That's a lot of time to take out of a week to just stay up to date with what's going on. And so you think about these educators and so forth when they're already balancing so many other things. Just keeping up with the advancements, which are going to be exponential because of it's almost like it feeds itself, right? So you have these AI capabilities, and it's the advancement is no longer going to be, not that it's been linear, but it's really going to take off exponentially and be much more difficult to keep up with. So setting aside that time, making sure that you've got those resources available, and that if you have a staff of educators, that they're being trained on these advancements as well, and the pitfalls is really important.
Yeah, I totally agree. There should be this balance. And so what is the role of cross-functional collaboration in building resilient learning systems?
That's a good one. So when I think of that in the space of education, so there's a student and educator relationship, but I think there also should be the educator and parent relationship to really understand how is my child doing with the information in the classroom? How are they doing at home to learning? Like, are there any gaps there that you see that maybe the child was too shy to say in the classroom that the parent could advocate for them or their guardian could advocate for them?
Looking at you, Google Classroom. There's no parent portal. There's no parental section in Google Classroom. It's like we don't even exist.
Yeah.
I harassed their head researcher through DMs for a very long time. She never responded.
Oh
But
no.
I would be like, well, what's the homework? Well, what's this? What's that? And they're just, parents are going to have to play a huge piece of this. And I think there will be a lot of grassroots kind of actions that have to happen in the school. Do you have solar panels? If not, get them. Do a fundraiser. Figure out how. It's clean water. Take the initiative in your school, in your district. Like, this is not going to happen kind of from the top down. I think it's going to happen if it's going to be done responsibly. It's going to happen from the bottom up.
Yeah, it definitely takes a village, like leading into the communities too, like libraries. Maybe that could be a place where city councils put fundings into so that people have somewhere to go to learn more information when they can't clearly get it off of things like Google Classroom, you know? Like make it accessible for people. Yeah.
And it makes me wonder what's going to happen to paper books. Like, I don't ever want paper books to go away.
I don't either. Don't say that, Anne. That's scary. I didn't even think of that.
Like, no, like there should be a whole movement against that. It should be mandatory that,
you should have at least one paper book.
On every. That's a whole other subject. But I think that's the beauty of going to the library and looking at books. Just because you have AI, and this is what I'm talking about, grassroots, like that rule, who's going to put that rule into place? Maybe a principal at one school, and that's not going to be a federal mandate that kids have to still go to libraries and touch books, and so I think things like that, things that are kind of heart and soul-ish, right? We can't expect anybody to kind of to make those things mandatory. We have to push for them at the kind of grassroots level.
Yeah, I've been seeing more tiny libraries pop up in the area where I'm at, and I'm like, that's really awesome because I didn't see any tiny libraries in my area. But also, to be fair, I could walk to the library nearby. So, but not everybody had that access, Everyone has different backgrounds, different constraints that they're dealing with, and to really look at it in the way of, okay, what's one small thing? What's one small MVP that we can do to integrate this? If people can't get to the library, can we bring a piece of the library to them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think something that the technology that is it's my idea. Like, I think that it's smartphones that are everywhere right now. Like, something that you can see like in a more far away, like nowhere in the world, is like you can see like a smartphone in everyone's hands right now. And also that I noticed that these are like these platforms that provide offline education. Like, there is this website that works offline and online as well, and they're trying to teach this like AI basics and fundamentals to everyone all around the world, so they can find out and they can integrate these technologies into what they do, in different places that they don't have access to the technology in a variety of ways. So how do you think it can be how we can use this the smartphones to teach the basics of AI to everyone all around the world, even in the some places that there is no internet, but they have these smartphones, they're using that
Well, schools are banning smartphones, which cool. But those kids, a lot of those kids still have laptops. So
Yeah.
it's they're little mini Chromebooks, and I mean, by me, I shouldn't say that in general. That's what happens, because there's plenty of kids who have nothing at all like that. So how do you feel? That I think that's sort of the precursor, right? Do you have to put technology in every single person's hands?
Yeah.
Then the next question is, what do you do with it?
Yeah, yeah, and that's a real conundrum, right? Because you see, if you see the studies that support removing smartphones from the classroom, right? And that's so it's kind of like, where's the balance between, so you want to get education out to as many people as possible, and that's where you have your massively open classrooms where the Khan Academies of the world and those sorts of things really excel in those spaces. I think that's like really great support for families, for people who are trying to learn new skills, who are trying to expand their knowledge base. There's phenomenal opportunities to expand learning and to kind of remove barriers. But then when you take it into the personal and you take it into your children or your children's school, they do need to develop those additional social skills. They do need to be able to interact, pay attention, perform in a more physical world versus just the electronic world. And so it's kind of like walking that tightrope of how do you keep the personal, how do you keep the personal interaction, how do you keep the humanity. When you look at studies that show the impact of excessive phone use on empathy skills, for example. It's like you need to be able to have the full physical, psychological experience outside of the electronic world, but then you want to utilize these tools to the maximum capability to expand, break down barriers, and kind of help move things forward. It's going to be an interesting balancing act, and I don't have the answer to it.
Yeah, I see someone in the comments was saying, like, something that annoys me is how certain tech bros really do feel that you could replace all jobs because they think so little about humanity. And as a teacher, if they're human, they're limited, but they can still hug a kid if they scrap their knees. And how can AI do that? What about special needs and physical and cognitive needs? And they're suggesting that even if AI and robotics do catch up to humanity's soft touch and small movements along with gentleness, I don't see AI only classrooms being a good place for students or humanity. And I was thinking back to this study. There's like this study from the psychologist Harry Harlow, where they had monkeys in one group interact with this robotic mother, and another group they interacted with a human. And the monkeys that interacted with that robotic mother, they were still fed and everything. They got the bare minimum. But when they were faced with a situation of distress, oh my gosh, like they like it was unethical for that poor little animal to feel distress versus the one that received that human touch and that care. And when we're having that physical touch with another, like when a child is born, you release that oxytocin. That's a bonding thing, and that bonding relates to empathy and human connection. And so I do agree with this person's comment of like, it's not going to replace that human physical touch unless they get to the point where like they start feeling weird, but they're going to be all rubbery, I bet. But anyways, I'm just imagining the future of like humanoids. They're probably going to have a rubbery texture. That's my hypothesis. But
I had done a post like a year ago asking people, what jobs do you think AI should never touch? And almost all of them were around children, nurses, things that my goal was to see which jobs absolutely have to be done by a human if there's, any way around it. And almost all of them had to do with nurture, care. Like you just can't take that away. I mean, there's a major mental health crisis brewing, I mean, on top of the one we already have, just
Right.
from people living in their phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
but if us to expect any agency to be proactive, it just doesn't happen. There's too much money involved. So those are the things that podcasts like this and people who listen to them need to spread to each other, grassroots. Like, we have to take steps before it happens. Let's be proactive and save, not save, but do what we can to minimize this next massive wave of mental health crises
Mm-hmm.
because of XYZ. We know what's coming. We have to shut it down before it happens. Like, no, like there's a simple one. It's a simple comparison. Like, one hospital nurse, Emily's listening, she probably knows exactly the number, gets one hospital nurse and one nurse's assistant gets like 29 patients. Like, and those are those are laws that come, I think it's statewide, right? We have to make sure that those numbers for our kids don't get skewed, where they're like, all right, 100 children can have one human teacher and 10 AI. Like, we have to shut that down before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And it goes to the discussion about physical activity too. There's a tremendous body of research and evidence that shows that early, your cognitive skills are developed in tandem with your physical skills. If you're not getting those physicals, and this, it just reminds me of, so in early education, my children were in Australia, and they had a very physical curriculum for the, 4-year-old, 5-year-old time frame, where they were actually assessed and not really, I won't say graded, but there was assessments of their physical skills. Can they hop? Can they skip? Can they walk on it? And when I asked about it, they said those are early indicators. If they see things cropping up there, it's early indicators of potential reading issues or writing issues or other things down the road. So they start intervention at the sign of seeing those different kind of signals creeping up there. And the practice of those skills of skipping and so forth can actually enhance and improve reading abilities and other things as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I want to ask the audience to share like any questions that they have. We're gonna answer all the questions in 3 minutes. We're gonna start answering questions in the comments. If you have any questions, please share them in the comments, and we'll make sure that we'll answer them. So to wrap up our discussion, so let's focus on collaboration. Like, what does meaningful collaboration mean in this space? Like, how can we create this inclusive AI-powered learning ecosystems that like include also human and AI next to each other, collaborating with each other to creating this environment for our children and like in the future? What do you think it's gonna look like? Yeah.
So I don't know if this is what it's gonna look like, but this is what I would hope is that we also don't forget our elders, right? Like, they have a lot of lessons that they can pass on to us of that they've probably been like, I've seen this shit so many times,
Yeah.
can give us some tips on like how we might leverage them, how we might move differently. Like, where I think sometimes when we talk about collaboration, we always think about our horizontals, like who's next to us, who's in the same field, but also there's so much wealth in that cross-generational collaboration too. And looking inwards to ourselves when systems start to fail us, like education is right now taking a toll because of the funding, we can look at ourselves within the community to see how we can support one another. And so that's where I would hope it would go. But yeah, I would like to hear what Kathy and Anne's thoughts are.
So I think there's a real opportunity, when you're talking about collaboration, to make sure that there's not a reinvention of the wheel occurring in multiple places, so that we have resources that can be utilized rather than, like, I want to help my child learn XYZ, or as a professional, I want to learn this, that rather than falling back on or going to generic chatbots, which have a tremendous environmental cost, economic cost, that we do start to develop more of these like kind of specialized models and maybe agents that can cut down on the compute load that's going to be associated with moving forward. So I see, that's an area of tremendous collaboration and maybe some potential, working groups or so forth to bring together some standard resources, so there's not a lot of duplication of effort.
I think for me, number one is define your ethics, right? Like in your district, in your classroom, in your school, in your state, what are your AI ethics going to be? That's sort of something I had been studying, is starting an AI project or bringing AI into your company. What are your rules? What are you going to hold yourself accountable to? And start there, right? I know Khan Academy, I think it was Khan Academy, like their tutors never give the answer, right? So, workshop one is define your ethics, figure out what they're going to be, and then use that as your stepping off point to what will happen next. Because, and also I think parents and teachers and students will all want the same thing, but the people in charge of the money and making the laws won't. And I think now more than ever, those movements of parents and teachers and students getting aligned with one another and making sure schools stay human which could be part of the ethics. So for me, it's kind of two-pronged, right? Define those ethics and then find your people to make sure those ethics don't get taken away.
That was well said, Anne.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. I think we need to take the most out of AI, and we shouldn't restrict students from using AI in doing their homeworks and doing becoming more creative, and we need to even encourage them to use AI to do their homeworks, because it's gonna increase the quality of what they do, because they're getting help from something that they can talk to it freely without being afraid of being judged. They can share their ideas without any fear. So, and they can become more creative. They can increase their productivity, and they can also increase the quality of what they do and their homeworks. And it's going to be good that teachers also get help of AI in their teaching, and students get help of AI in what they do, and in going further of going beyond what they're learning at school. And yeah, so if anyone have questions, please share them in the comment with us, and we're going to answer them right now. So I'm gonna give a few seconds for everyone to share. We can go through the comments and see. So Emily said, I love the ideas of how to imagine how teaching could be.
Hi, Emily.
Yeah. Yes, teachers need more money, more resources. Yeah, we all agree with that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that kind of stands out to me when I listen to people talking of about bringing technology into the classroom, AI, whatever. I remember when calculators, I'm not going to date myself, but I remember when calculators were the big topic of discussion. And do you let kids use calculators on tests or not use calculators on tests? And is it going to destroy their ability to do math if you allow them to bring calculators into a test? And I think, that's what resonated. Like when I hear these discussions, that's what resonates with me. And we haven't destroyed math, and we haven't destroyed people's ability to do math. In many cases, when I saw my kids coming through school, they were doing math at levels beyond what we were even thinking about doing when I was in middle school or high school. So I think that's one of the, kind of look back retrospectively, we've seen these things come into the classroom before. We've seen these things, have impacts. How was it handled? What worked? What didn't work? And, what lessons, need to be gleaned from that. We still need to learn our times tables. We still need to do, basic addition, subtraction, all of that. Do we still have slide rulers? If anybody knows what those are, no, we have, advanced tools beyond that. And, I think that's kind of the thing to keep it all in perspective and really make sure that we're leaning into previous lessons learned.
Yeah, and I love that you brought
Exactly.
in math, Kathy, because like I know at least 1 in 4 people globally, um, there's a gap in that literacy skill, and that gap is even more so when it comes to math. And even though math can be intimidating, it helps you with that critical thinking piece because you're thinking systematically of a sequence of things, like how I don't know how to explain it in a way that's not going to get myself confused right now. But it does like it requires that you visualize a process and you think about how these systems play into the equation. So it facilitates systems thinking, which I think is very critical when you're out in the real world. Like after the classroom setting, you go out in the real world, you're working in a corporate space or any organization that might not be corporate. There's going to be systems, processes, and people that are part of the equation of your success at that organization. So
It's
I
funny you
think,
bring up math. Oh, sorry.
yeah. No, go ahead. That was it.
I just feel like math is such a huge issue. I've been developing an app with shout out to Tech Fleet for quite a while to teach math to people who have learning disabilities or anybody who just struggles with math. And it's so funny from when we started pre-AI to now, our plan on how to build it has completely changed. And then yesterday I got turned on to, is it 3 blue, 1 brown?
Oh yeah, that's a good
Those
one.
Yeah.
educational videos that like if I
They're
had
great.
access to videos like that, I would be like, like an organic chemist right now, or a rocket scientist, because and that's, I think, the beauty part of this is being able to serve people data in a way they can absorb and retain and use in the way they need it, right? That's the key. In the way. How would you like to learn today was one of the key things from the app that we took, because we were to teach math, but we were going to teach it. We were going to serve as a buffet style education, right? One person can't do that, but with the assistance of AI, they can, right? So if you like to learn, if you need to, audio learner, and I know there are people saying, though, that's not true. People don't, that's not, there was a study that said that learning styles aren't real. Good on your study. You're wrong. We all have preferences, right? It might not be exact science of what it was, whatever, but we have preferences. For me, those videos on that channel that man makes, like, I've never felt so seen from an educational standpoint as I was like, this man completely understands how my brain works and how to get really difficult concepts into my special little brain. And if the point of it being, no matter how you learn, having it served to you in a way that works might be the best possible outcome of AI in a classroom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
And
just adding that link to the chat, and because that is a really great channel. Like the visuals on how Transformers worked, like Transformers and LLMs is a really complicated topic, but the way that this person visualized it was like, oh my gosh, I understand things. Like,
I was trying to find him on LinkedIn. Like, I'm like, who is this man?
Yeah.
Who is this person who understands my brain so deeply? I'm still blown away. It's only been 24 hours since I got turned on to it, but I'm like, if this was available, and now with AI video generation, like, this is probably easier than ever for people like him to create these videos, and that's a good application.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's
Yeah,
using AI for good.
Yes,
totally agree.
exactly.
Yeah. So we can wrap up if you all agree. So thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing their wisdom and care, and to everyone in the audience for being part of this conversation. So today we explored like how designing AI for cognitive and cultural inclusion look like, and building a scalable and ethical system for lifelong learning, and embedding equity and empathy into every layer of educational innovation. So before we close, I would like to invite each panelist to share one final message, and what's one principle or insight you believe should guide for future of AI in education? Anyone?
I always struggle because I'm like, I don't want to talk over people, but Kathy, you could go first.
I think I've already forgotten the question, but I think the one thought, to kind of I'd like to leave is just, to try. Like there's going to be stops and starts and things that work and don't work, and I think the critical thing is to just keep trying and moving forward. And we know there's a tremendous amount of application. We know this is going to be, an accelerator of of learning opportunities across the spectrum for people's entire lives. This shouldn't just be seen as like, how can we take this and make it so that people feel comfortable learning throughout their lifetimes, not just at discrete points in times. And I think that's the takeaway what I would like to put out there. And apologies, I'm not sure if it completely answers the question, but
That's
just
great.
keep on trying and working to make it better.
Thank you, Cassie. Jess?
Yeah, I would say make AI your learning path, make it very personal to you. Because once it makes sense to you, you're going to get so excited that you're going to be able to go and talk to everybody about it, and you'll get them excited about it. And it's contagious. Like, I was learning Python and I was like, some of these concepts are very dry, but it's interesting, but it's still interesting. So what I did is I was like, explain Python as if it were like a magic and sorcery. And then it started explaining things like, hey, you're a wizard if you had a wand with all these spells, and the spells are like the libraries. And I was like,
That's
yeah,
That's
cool.
great.
like if you could have learned calculus or algebra with that back then, like I would
Yep.
have loved that. So make it personal to you and something that you like, and then you'll find that it's going to spark your learning path.
I really love that, Jess. And
I would say I'll keep it scannable. Keep it human. Keep the money out of it. Protect the kids. And remember, you can teach yourself just about anything.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Thank you, everyone. I will just say, like, don't afraid of using AI in whatever you do, like, and just like follow the regulations and be aware of uh, the cons of it as well as you're using it. So, and I want to thank you again for being with us, the audience, the panelists, and everyone. And we will see you in the next SWARMathon. Thank you all.
Thanks, you guys. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
See
Bye.
you.